Hi, I'm Kim, and this is my channel where we talk all things economics because I love it and I'm a big geek, so that's what we're going to do. Today is going to be a fairly short video. It's just going to be a quick market update. We are going to talk about what we saw this week. The markets took a pretty hard hit at the beginning of the week because there's been this long, drawn out dispute with China and the US about trade. And so if you haven't been following this or you haven't heard this, I don't know where you've been. It's been going on for about a year. It's escalated in the last little bit, even more so. The markets took, like I said, a big hit because of that. It dropped dramatically. Of course, it rebounded right after that. Why? Because every time the markets drop, and it's for really no fundamental reasons. It's superficial reasons like this trade dispute. That's a great time to buy when the markets are low, which is exactly what happened. You saw the markets tank one day, and then you've seen people just buy and buy and buy after that because the prices had been pushed down. So that's what's happened this week. The trade dispute, okay, everyone keeps saying trade war. It is not a full-blown trade war. This is a trade dispute still. Why is this a trade dispute and not a war? Because China can't afford a trade war. If you don't know why, I've actually made a video, that was my last video, about the Chinese economy and why it can't sustain a trade war. Sorry, that wasn't my last video. It was the video before my last one. Anyways, that goes over a couple of the factors as to why China can't afford a trade war. They have a lot of economic headwinds. Now, although they face a lot of economic headwinds on many fronts, that does not mean that their economy is weak. Their economy is not in a free fall. I heard a report, or rather a commentator earlier this week, that, that China is in a free fall. No, they're not. They're slowing down, yes, because no one can produce at 9-10% every year in GDP. That's just not sustainable, especially where that economy is at the point where, again, they need to turn from exporting to internal consumption. Now, for the size of the economy and to make this turn, there's a lot of variables that are involved. It's going to take time, and until they turn, it's going to slow down their economic activity, which is to be anticipated. Now, this is also part of the reason that it's a hindrance to China, that they really are just holding on to the idea for dear life that their economy cannot grow bigger, cannot become stronger without exporting to being the main source of their GDP. They don't realize if they turn to internal consumption, again, they would blow us out of the water. We would not be able to catch up with them. But just like any economy, and it's not just China, any economy does this. They get rich from exporting, and then they feel like that is the only way they can make money, and so they are desperate to continue to export. But the problem with any economy when they build their economy on exporting is that eventually their goods and services end up costing more money to export out, because their labor costs and their material costs start increasing because the country is becoming richer. That's why every economy that's considered a developed economy, although they still export, a lot of their GDP growth comes from internal consumption. And so, meaning that the citizens of the sovereignty end up consuming most of the goods and services that are produced within that sovereignty. This is typical. We see this, we've seen this, and this is usually the path most economies go. But every economy does the same thing, where they kick and scream about, going from exporting to internal consumption. It's not a bad thing. That is the next step in the progression for any big economy. But they are fighting this very heavily, which gives the US leverage at this point. to use tariffs against the goods and services that are being imported from China to the US. And so that's where it's at right now. There's a lot of going back and forth. It's almost becoming more of a war of vanities than it is about the tariffs. This really, if you look at it, it's not really about trade. It's really about political power. That's what this really comes down to. If you really look at this, it's not just even protectionist policy. This is really it's a political power play between China and the U.S. This is where I get really annoyed because it's not really about the economics, but it's going to affect the economies of both countries. And really, it's actually affecting the economies of the whole world, because the US and China are number one and number two biggest economies in the world. And if they're having this dispute, it's going to affect everybody else in the world. And so it's causing a lot of disturbances in markets and in exporting and in Forex, and I mean, you name it. If it gets traded, it's being affected by this, which is why I'm really bothered by it, I'm really annoyed because this is just not going anywhere. It hasn't really progressed in the last year, and it's just time consuming, and it's disturbing the markets for no good reason. Anyway, so that's what's going on. Like I said, this was going to be a short video just because we've heard so much about this trade dispute. Just wanted to give you a quick update and overview of it. As it stands right now, again, the U.S. economy is doing well, and the housing market's still not a fan of seeing how high it's gone up. It is definitely cooling down, but it's ramping up now because it is spring to summer season. And the prices that we're seeing across the country are just really not justified. And so this is where I get concerned. Like I've told you guys in previous videos, I'm keeping an eye on this just because I don't like the trends I'm seeing, and there's, again, no real fundamentals to support this type of movement, especially where there's been so much discussion about how the millennials are so buried in debt they can't get loans for homes, but yet housing prices are increasing in, just leaps and bounds across the country, which is, again, not justified fundamentally. And so, I would just say keep an eye on that. I'm keeping an eye on that, and we'll just see how this plays out. Hopefully, the Federal Reserve will continue to just keep interest rates as they are for their next meeting. I think that will be good all around. And then probably somewhere down the road later on, we'll see probably, like I said, maximum of one interest rate move. Maximum of two interest rate movements, minimum of one interest rate movement this year. So, all right, as always, if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments below, and go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys later.